I understand that my track record of declaring series over this postseason has not been very good. But if Trae Young misses Game 4 and beyond,
let's hear it.
This series is over.
Here we go.
All right, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say this series. Maybe that's good news for the Hawks fans.
Do it.
But they cannot withstand the loss of Trae Young, the way Phoenix withstood the loss of Chris Paul with the shoulder and with the COVID, and the way the Clippers have been able to play without Kawhi Leonard. They just can't. Trae Young is the only star on that team. All right, the other teams have another star. Their offensive rating with Trae Young on the court in this series is 110. Without him on the court, it's 84. We saw in the last 7 minutes of the game when he was actually on the court but unable to really do anything because of the ankle, they were outscored 25-7. And here's the thing. The Hawks have got to be cautious and smart with this thing. I know it was 25 years ago, but remember, Grant Hill played on a bad ankle in a playoff game, and it ruined his career. Now, Grant, we know, is in ownership with the Hawks, so I'm sure he'll bring that up and say, look, if this thing is serious at all, Trae's going to probably want to play. We know he's a gamer. Obviously, the Hawks are going to want him out there, but they have to err on the side of caution. Now, if it's not that bad, if it's like Cameron Payne with Phoenix, and he can come back the next game and play, great. I think we'd all like to see that. But I'm just saying, if there's any question, if there's any doubt, then they should err on the side of caution and play the long game, because this guy obviously has a fantastic future, and so do the Hawks with him.
Listen, Khris, I get your point on the Hawks. You know, when Trae went down with 40 seconds to go in the third, they were up by 3 points. He had 32 points, and they were in total control going back to the first quarter. First quarter, they had a 15-point lead, and then the Bucks start chopping wood. And when you look at the third quarter and what happened, to me, the storyline was about the Bucks. It became about the Bucks because Khris Middleton just stepped into his bag and took it to a whole nother level. So when you see it, it's like, when he went down, they were up by 3. But if you watch that third quarter, that run that the Bucks went on, it was all about them. It was like they finally woke up in the second half. Khris Middleton was sensational. You know, this is a guy who's been big at home and struggled on the road. I wouldn't say struggled on the road, but more so like he hasn't played huge. 38, tying his career high in the playoffs last night. And then Giannis, Nick. Giannis is, watching this dude, he's an easy 30 and 10. And last night I found myself in my own head, like, where do I stand with Giannis? We understand his lack of ability at the free throw line and also from 3. But this dude, every single night, he gets an easy 30 and 10. And I felt like that was the bigger story than Trae Young, an emerging superstar, and that ankle.
I agree with you, Brandon. Listen, I think the Hawks right now should feel great. They have now, in my mind, added themselves to the list of contenders in the Eastern Conference moving forward. And when you look at who in the East has done in a single playoff run more than Trae has done in this one, the answer is Durant's done it and Giannis is doing it. That's it. No one, Embiid hasn't done this in a playoff run. Harden hasn't done this. So Trae, they're going to get Bogey, will be back healthy. DeAndre Hunter will be playing. Cam Reddish will be playing. Plus, they're a very young team, so those guys will be better. Maybe they lose John Collins. So I think the future is very bright. But, Broussard, I want to run something by you about the Bucks. Because I can tell Brandon what we should make of Giannis. What we made of Shaq. And this Bucks team, we've seen it before, what they're trying to do. It's the 2000 Lakers model. And you might be like, oh, Middleton's not close to Kobe. Middleton absolutely is very close, if not a touch better than Kobe the first championship year. In 2000, just hold on. Not in 01. 01, Kobe was a superstar, and 02, Kobe was a top 5 player in the league. But in the 2000 championship run, Kobe had a half dozen playoff games where he scored less than 20. He had a couple finals games where he scored in single digits. He also had some really great games like Middleton did last night. But you look at it, it's like, okay, we've got a superstar, unstoppable MVP as our number one option, Giannis and Shaq. We can't totally rely on that guy, though, at the very end of games. So we have a number two option who is, in Kobe's case, going to be great. In Middleton's case, he is what he is, that we lean on in the fourth quarter. We've got a point guard who is incredibly important to what we do, but can't really rely on him offensively, Fisher and Drew Holiday. And if our role players are hitting their shots, we're basically unbeatable. Like, this is how the Lakers, Broussard, won that first title. Now, the way they won their next two was Kobe got to a level Middleton never will get to. We know that. But I think we've seen this before, and I think Giannis admitting, hey, I don't have to be the guy in the fourth quarter, it doesn't bother me, is a huge positive step for them. You seemed aghast by my comp, but for that, think back to 2000. Kobe was not a superstar yet. Kobe was around the level that Middleton is right now. Kobe took a huge leap over the next few years, and he's one of the 10 greatest players ever. But, does that comp work at all for you?
No, you saved it when you talked about that one particular year. Obviously, Kobe still, as you said, had some big moments in those finals. But the difference is it's just you never really want to put Khris Middleton and Kobe Bryant in the same sentence. And I'm not saying that to be funny.
Sure.
But because we knew, even though Kobe wasn't there yet, we knew where he was going. But for that year, it's not a bad comp. The difference to me with Giannis and Shaq, I mean, obviously there are many differences, but one reason I wouldn't quite say Giannis was Shaq is because Shaq knew what he was. You know, Shaq wasn't going to take 2 or 3 threes a game. You know, Shaq knew, I'm down low, I'm going to dominate, and everybody knew that's what he did. And so that's the only difference. I'd like to see Giannis. Look, he was great in the paint yesterday. He's been great this entire series in the paint. So maybe he's figuring out a little more, okay, this is where I need to stay. But, you know, I get it. But Giannis, his body is obviously a little different than Shaq, the way Shaq plays. But, Brandon, what I'll say, what you want to make of Giannis, he's a top 4 or 5 player in the league. He's an all-time great. There's no denying any of that. But he's still got room to grow, which is scary because he can grow. It's not like, he'll never get a decent jumper. He could get a decent jumper. So sky's the limit for this guy.
Well, I mean, that's why I jumped in there is because the game was totally different back then. You didn't see the centers and the big forwards shooting threes right there. They knew what their job was to get in the post. Nowadays, if you are big, you got to shoot the three, or you can't play in this game. You can't play in this league or in this era. Now, the thing, Wiles, where I have so much respect for Giannis is because he's not afraid to fail in front of people. It's almost as if he's confident enough to say, I know through these playoffs there's so much on the line, but I'm also working on my game. Like, when he's wide open, he's not hesitating to take the shot. And of course, he's not perfect from the free throw line or from the perimeter, but for him to go out there and still shoot the ball when everything's on the line, I can respect that 100%, Wiles.
Sometimes the media is too tough and unfair to athletes. And other times it goes the other way when Brandon can give Giannis a compliment and then we show 2 videos of Giannis airballing free throws. Like, you know what? Gotta respect it. You know, I respect his moxie. Gets up there, he's shooting like 9% from 3. I got to respect it. This is a sign of mental strength. I'm like, all right, I give it to you.
No, listen.
I know, I'm joking. I'm just kidding. But I do think that confidence and a sort of like, hey, no worries attitude percolates on down to the rest of the team. Because Paul George is averaging, 27 points in a game? And Paul George is, consistently getting ripped on social media and, sort of standard media. Khris Middleton had 15 points in Game 1, 15 points in Game 2. He had more points in the fourth quarter last night than he did in the first 2 games. But there was no real Khris Middleton slander. There just wasn't. This guy's an all-star, but he just sort of immune to it. And you also don't see it affecting his game. He was 0 for 9, and then he went 2 for 7. So he was 2 for 13 from 3 before last night's game. But there's a confidence there of like, all right, we don't get too high, we don't get too low. Let's just keep shooting. Eventually these go in. And finally the numbers came up last night, Nick.
Well, yeah, and he's not going to get that criticism because, to Broussard's point, he's not that level of player. Like, he's the very good, not great player in the same mold that C.J. McCollum is, which is when they're excellent, they get a lot of love, and when they're not, we're not going to crush them for it. But I think the Giannis point, I know Brandon was talking about threes, and we showed video of free throws, but I think the free throw thing matters in a good way. Because I thought that video of him with P.J. Tucker from this weekend, where he's like, hey, I airball a couple free throws. Don't care. Gonna keep going. I think his mindset is in such a great place right now. And you've seen other guys start missing free throws and shy away from it. Giannis won't. I also think we talk about, Broussard, you and I have talked about, or we've all talked about, but you and I have talked about it for years, the kind of cultural differences between the international star that comes to the league and the guy who was raised here. And we're like, hey, the guy who was raised here would be like, I have to guard KD. I'm checking myself into the game. And Giannis has never been that, right? Well, there's a plus to that, I think, to a degree, which is this quote after the game. When he's asked about Khris Middleton, he's like, hey, I can be the man for the whole game. Fourth quarter, don't care. Trust Khris to death. Khris asks for the ball, better give him the ball. We all know that there are stars in this league that if their Robin was crushing it in the fourth quarter, they still would carve out a few possessions and say, gotta get me the ball. All right, he's doing great. Got it. Giannis don't care. And so I think the fact that you've got fans chanting at him at the free throw line, laughing at him, you've got people saying on television he's not the most skilled guy on his own team. I don't think he cares, Jenna, and I think that is a huge asset that the Bucks have right now. I think it was a huge reason they won last night.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.